Okay. Okay, now 25 ways to develop a growth mindset. 25 ways to develop a growth mindset. It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. It's not how good you are, it's about how good you want to be. Want to be. That's important. If you it's For example, if you are six pack abs, if you have six pack abs, but it's not about having six pack abs, but it's about wanting to have six pack abs. That is very important. It's about wanting to have six pack abs. Want to be healthy, want to be six want to be wise, want to be intellectual being, want to be higher purpose, want to be attaining of some higher goal, higher purpose. That is what is important. So now in one world, efforts is a bad thing. It like future means you are not smart or talented. If you were, you wouldn't need effort. In the other world, effort is what makes you smart or talented. In one world, effort is a bad thing. It's like failure means you are not smart or talented. If you are, you wouldn't need effort. In the other world, effort is what makes you smart or talented. Okay. In one world, effort is a bad thing, like failure means you are not smart or talented. If you were, you wouldn't need effort. In the other world, effort is what makes you smart or talented. What if you were if your true learning potential was unknown? Even even unknowable at best. What if you were impossible to foresee what you could accomplish with a few years of passion, toil, and training? According to Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, this isn't some hypothetical situation depend on any manner of factors from genes to environment. It's mindset, and it's one you can cultivate at any point in life. A growth mindset, as Dweck calls it, is pretty much exactly what it sounds like: a tendency to believe what you can grow. In her book Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, she explains that while a fixed mindset assumes that our character, intelligence, and creative ability are static give, givens which you can't change in any meaningful way, a growth mindset thrives on challenge and sees failure not as evidence of unintelligence but as a heartening springboard for growth and for stretching our existing abilities. She writes, believing that your qualities are carved in stone creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over. If you have only a certain amount of intelligence, a certain personality, and a certain moral character, well, then you would better prove that you have a healthy dose of them. It simply wouldn't do to look or feel deficient in these most basic characteristics. The fixed mindset can negatively impact all aspects of your life. Beck says, I've seen so many people with this one consuming goal of proving themselves in their careers and in their relationships. Every situation calls for confirmation of their intelligence, personality, or character. Every situation is evaluated. Will I succeed or fail? Will I look smart or dumb? Will I be accepted or rejected? Will I feel like a winner or a loser? But when you start viewing things as mutable, the situation gives way to the bigger picture. This growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and attitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. This is important because it can actually change what you strive for and what you see as success. By changing the definition, significance, and impact of failure, you change the deepest meaning of effort. In this mindset, the hand you are dealt is just the starting point for development. So, how does this apply to learning, and what can we do to help instill this attitude in our students? Here is our list of recommended practices. 25 ways to develop a growth mindset. First, acknowledge and embrace imperfections. Hiding from your weaknesses means you will never overcome them. Second, view challenges as opportunities. Having a growth mindset means releasing opportunities for self improvement. Learn more about how to fail well. Third, try different learning tactics. There is no one size fits all model for learning. What works for one person may not work for you. Learn about learning strategies. 4. Follow the research on brain plasticity. The brain isn't fixed. The mind shouldn't be either. Replace the word failing with word learning. When you make a mistake or fall short of a goal, you haven't failed, you have learned. 6. Stop seeking approval. When you prioritize approval for learning, you sacrifice your own potential for growth. Value the process over the end result. Intelligent people enjoy the learning process and don't mind when it continues beyond an expected time frame. Cultivate a sense of purpose. If you truly appreciate growth, you will want to share your progress with others. Emphasize growth over speed. Learning fast isn't the same as learning well. And learning well sometimes requires allowing time for mistakes. Reward actions, not traits. Tell students when they are doing something smart, not just being smart. Redefine genius. The myths been busted. Genius requires hard work, not talent alone. Portray criticism as positive. You don't have to use that hackneyed constructive criticism, but you do have to believe in the concept. Disassociate improvement from failure. Stop assuming that room for improvement translates into failure. Provide regular opportunities for reflection. Let students reflect on their learning at least once a day. Place effort before talent. Hard work should always be rewarded before inherent skill. Highlight the relationship between learning and brain training. The brain is like a muscle that needs to be worked out, just like the body. Cultivate grit. Students with that extra bit of determination will be more likely to seek approval from themselves rather than others. Abandon the image. Naturally smart sounds just about as believable as spontaneous generation. Now, you won't achieve the image if you are not ready for the work. Use the word yet. Dweck says not yet has become one of her favorite phrases. Whenever you see students struggling with a task, just tell them they haven't mastered it yet. Learn from other people's mistakes. It's not always wise to compare yourself to others, but it's important to realize that humans share the same weaknesses. Make a new goal for every goal accomplished. You will never be done learning. Just because your mind midterm exam is over doesn't mean you should stop being interested in a subject. Growth minded people know how to constantly create new goals to keep themselves stimulated. Take risks in the company of others. Stop trying to save face all the time. Just let yourself goof up now and then. It will make it easier to take risks in the future. Think realistically about time and effort. It takes time to learn. Don't expect to master every topic under the sun in one sitting. Take ownership over your aptitude. Once you develop a growth mindset, own it. Acknowledge yourself as someone who possesses a growth mentality and be proud to let it guide you throughout your educational career. Now I'm going to tell you about creating a purpose driven organization. When you When Gary Henderson first became the president of DT Energy, he did not believe in the power of an organizational purpose. We are not talking about having a clear mission that focuses largely on how business will generate economic value. DT had one that set out the goal of creating long-term gains for shareholders, and Anderson understood its importance. AI purpose is not about economic exchanges. It reflects something more aspirational. It explains how the people involved with an organization are making a difference, gives them a sense of meaning and draws their support. But like many of the leaders we have interviewed in our research, Anderson started his tenure as president skeptical about how much it mattered. The concept of higher purpose didn't fit into his mostly economic understanding of the firm. But then the Great Recession of 2008 hit, and he knew had to get his people to devote more of themselves to work. Even before the financial crisis, surveys had demonstrated that DTE employees were not very engaged. It was a classic quandary. Employees couldn't seem to break free of old, tired behaviors. They weren't bringing their smarts and creativity to their jobs. They were not performing up to their potential. Anderson knew that he needed a more committed workforce but did not know how to get one. That was when retired Army Major General Joe Rebels, then the CEO of USCA and DTE board member, invited Anderson to visit some USCA call centers. Familiar with the culture of most call centers, Anderson expected to see people going through the motions. Instead, he watched positive, fully engaged employees collaborate and go the extra mile for customers. Anderson asked how this could be. Rebels answered that a leader's most important job is to connect the people to their purpose. Every organization has a pool of change agents that usually goes untapped. What happened next was even more important. The company's leaders dedicated themselves to supporting that purpose and wove it into onboarding and training programs, corporate meetings, and culture building activities such as film festivals and sing alongs. As people judged the purpose to be authentic, a transformation began to take place. Engagement scores climbed. The company received a Gallup Great Workplace Award for 5 years in a row, and financial performance responded in kind. It is stock price more than tripled from the end of 2008 to the end of 2017. Why did purpose work so well after other interventions had failed? Anderson had previously tried to shake things up by providing training, altering incentives, and increasing managerial oversight. With disappointing results, it turned out that this approach was to blame, not his people. That's hard to recognize if, like many executives, you are applying conventional economic logic. You view your employees as self interested agents and design your organizational practices and culture accordingly. That hasn't paid off as you'd hoped. Many executives avoid working in their firm's purpose. Why? Because it defies that what they have learned in business schools and perhaps in subsequent experience. Their work is fundamentally contractual, and employees will seek to minimize personal costs and effort. Those are not necessarily faulty assumptions. Indeed, they describe the behavior in many environments reasonably well. However, they also amount to a self-fulfilling prophecy. When managers view employees this way, they create the very problems they expect. Employees choose to respond primarily to the incentives outlined in their contracts and the controls imposed on them. So consequently, they not only fail to see opportunities but also experience conflict, resist feedback, underperform, and personally stagnate. So managers, believing that their assumptions about employees have been validated, exert still more control and rely even more heavily on extrinsic incentives. Employees then narrowly focus on achieving those rewards, typically at the expense of activities that are hard to measure and often ignored, such as mentoring subordinates and sharing best practices. Overarching values and goals become empty words. People do only what they have to do. Results again fall short of expectations, and managers clamp down further. In this article, we provide a framework that can help managers break out of this vicious cycle. In our consulting work with hundreds of organizations and in our research, which include extensive interviews with dozens of leaders and the development of a theoretical model, we have to come to see that when an authentic purpose permeates business strategy and decision making, the personal good and the collective good become one. Positive peer pressure kicks in, and employees are recognized, re energized. Collaboration increases, learning accelerates, and performance climbs. We will look at how you can set off a simple chain of events in organization, drawing on examples from a range of companies how to do it. When organizations embrace purpose, it's often because a crisis forces leaders to challenge their assumptions about motivation and performance and to experiment with new approaches. But you don't need to wait for a dire situation. The framework you have developed can help you build a purpose driven organization. When you are not backed into a corner, it enables you to overcome the largest barrier to embracing purpose, that cynical transactional view of employee motivation, by following 8 essential steps. First, envision an inspired workforce. According to economists, every employer faces the principal agent problem, which is the standard economic model for describing an organization's relationships with its workers. Here is the basic idea: the principal and the agent form work contract. The agent is effort averse. For a certain amount of money, he or she will deliver a certain amount of labor and no more. Since effort is personally costly, the agent underperforms in providing it unless the principal puts contractual incentives and control systems in place to counter that tendency. This model precludes the notion of a fully engaged workforce. According to its logic, what Anderson saw at USAA is not possible. It would be foolish to aspire to such an outcome. One way to change that perception is to expose leaders to positive exceptions to the rule. Consider this July 2015 blog post by Mike Rowe, host of the Discovery Channel show Dirty Jobs, about an experience he had at a Hampton Inn. I left my hotel room this morning to jump out of a perfectly good airplane and saw part of a man standing in the hallway. His feet were on a ladder. The rest of him was somewhere in the ceiling. I introduced myself and asked what he was doing, along with satisfying my natural curiosity. It seemed a good way to delay my appointment with gravity, which I was in no hurry to keep. His name is Koiramunde. We quickly got to talking. Well, Mike, here is the problem, he said. My pipe has a crack in it, and now my hot water is leaking into my laundry room. Have got to turn off my water, replace my old pipe, and get my new one installed before my customers notice there is a problem. I asked if he needed a hand, and he told me the job wasn't dirty enough. We laughed, and Corey asked if you could have a quick photo. I said sure. Assuming he would return the favor, he asked why I wanted a photo of him, and I said it was because I liked the choice of pronouns. I like the way you talk about your work. I said it's not the hot water, and it's my hot water. It's not the laundry room, it's my laundry room. It's not a new pipe, it's my new pipe. Most people don't talk like that about their work. Most people don't own it. Croyer struggles and said, this is not a job, this is my job. I am glad to have it. I take pride in everything I do. He didn't know it, but Croyer's words made my job a little easier that day, because 3 hours later, when I was trying to work up the courage to leap out of a perfectly good airplane, I wasn't thinking about pulling the crazy ripcord on the parachute. I was thinking about pulling my ripcord and on my parachute. Colin Munda, in a purpose-driven employee, instead of minimizing effort as a typical agent would, he takes ownership. The fact that people like him exist is important. When coaching executives on how to do purpose work in their organizations, we often tell them it is If it is real, it is possible. If you can find one positive example, a person, a team, or unit that exceeds the norms, you can inspire others. Look for excellence, examine the purpose that drives you to excellence, and then imagine it imbuing your entire workforce. Discover the purpose. At a global oil company, we once met with members of a task force asked by the CEO to work on defining the organization's purpose. They handed us a document representing months of work. It articulated a purpose, a mission, and a set of values. We told them it had no power, with analysis and debate had produced only platitudes. The member of the task force had used only their heads to invent a higher purpose intended to capture employees' hearts, but did not invent a higher purpose, it already exists. You can discover it through empathy by feeling and understanding the deepest common needs of your workforce. That involves asking provocative questions, listening, and reflecting. Dobra Wall, a former dean of the School of Education at the University of Michigan, provides a good example. Like most companies, professional schools experience mission drift. As a new dean, Ball wanted to clarify her organization's purpose so that she could increase employees' focus, commitment, and collaboration. To learn and unlearn the organization, as she put it, she interviewed every faculty member. She expected to find much diversity of opinion, and she did. But she also found surprising commonality, what she called an emerging story about the faculty's strong desire to have a positive impact on society. Ball wrote up what she heard and shared it with the people she interviewed. She listened to their reactions and continued to refine their story. This was not just a listening tour, it was an extended, disciplined, interactive process. Ball says you identify gold nuggets, work with them, clarify them, integrate them, and continually feed them back. She refers to the process as collective creation, borrowing a phrase from agile and design thinking methodologies. As that work continued, it became clear that the school had strengths it could use for social good. For example, it had the capacity to influence how other institutions around the world train teachers, address issues of educational affordability, and serve under represented populations. Ball concluded that these foci had the greatest potential to integrate faculty members' efforts, drop impressive new hires, and attract funding for research. So she highlighted them as a crucial elements of the school's collective identity. Recognize the need for authenticity. Purpose has become a popular topic. Even leaders who don't believe in it face pressure from board members, investors, employees, and other stakeholders to articulate a higher purpose. This sometimes leads to statements like the one produced by the task force at the oil company when a company announces its purpose and values, but the words don't govern the behavior of senior leadership. The rings up follow. Everyone recognizes the hypocrisy, and employees become cynical. The process does harm. Some CEOs intuitively understand this danger. One actually told his senior leadership team that he didn't want to do purpose work because organizations are political systems and hypocrisy is inevitable. The statement illustrates an important point. The assumption that people act only out of self interest also gets applied to leaders who are often seen as disingenuous if they claim other motivations. A member of the team responded, "Why don't you change that? Let's identify a purpose and a set of values and live them with integrity." That earnest comment punctured the existing skepticism, and the team moved ahead. For an illustration of a purpose that does shape behavior, let us look at Sandler O'Neill Partners mid-sized investment bank that helps financial institutions raise capital. The company was successful in its niche and focused on the usual goal of maximizing shareholder value. However, on September 11, 2001, disaster struck. Located in the Twin Tower in New York, the company felt the full brunt of the terrorist attack. Jimmy Brown, soon to lead the firm's executive team, learned that over one-third of Sandler's people, including its top two executives, were dead, and the company's physical infrastructure was devastated. Many of its computers and customer records were gone. As the crisis unfolded, despite the exceptionally heavy demands of attending do business, Dunn made the decision that the Sadler department would attend the funeral of every foreign employee, which meant that they attended many funerals. As a result of witnessing so much suffering, he began to realize that the purpose of his firm was not only to satisfy customers and create shareholders value, but also treat employees like valued human beings. An organization often discovers its purpose when things are going badly. That led to some sharp departures from protocol. For example, he asked his CFO to pay the families of all the dead employees their salaries and bonuses through December 31st, 2001, and then asked if the company could do the same for all of 2002. The CFO said the firm could survive, but doing this would be inconsistent with its fiduciary responsibility to the partners, so the firm offered to buy out the ownership stake of any partner not one accepted. If your purpose is authentic, people know because it drives every decision and you do things all the other companies would not, like paying the families of dead employees. Doon told us that often organization discovers purpose and values when things are going badly, and that its true nature is revealed by what its leaders do in difficult times. He said, "You judge people not by how much they give, but by how much they have left after they give." Turn the authentic message into a constant message. When we spoke with CEO of global professional services company about how to build a purpose-driven organization, his first question was, "When will I be done?" We responded by telling a story about another CEO who had been trying to transform his construction company for a year. He showed us the plan and asked our opinion. We told him he deserved an A. Why wasn't it an A? After giving speeches for a year, he thought he was finished, but his people were just beginning to hear his message. He needed to keep clarifying the organization's purpose for as long as he was CEO. When we told him that, he sank into his chair in constant. Tony Moller, recently retired head of USA consumer operations at Bank of America, is a leader who understands the ongoing nature of purpose work. He says one thing that makes it relentlessly difficult that it involves getting institutions to shift direction, and existing cultures tend to impede movement as extensions of the culture managers to end up resisting the change, or the impediments are organizational complexity and competing demands. Mio Miola overcame those obstacles by clarifying the purpose of its division, treating operational excellence as a destination and allowing no other pressures to distract from it. He emphasized operational skills and leadership in employee training and development, and he brought that focus to every conversation, every decision, every problem his team faced. Always asking, "Will this make us better operators?" He says, "When you hold it constant like that, when you never waver, an amazing thing happens. The purpose sinks into the collective conscience. The culture changes, and the organization begins to perform at a higher level. Process becomes simpler and easier to execute and sustain. People start looking for permanent solutions rather than stopgap measures that create more inefficiencies through process variations." Embracing this mindset meant saying no to anything that didn't reflect it. In the division call center, for example, there had been a proposal to invest additional resources in technology and people so that the group could solve customers' problems faster and better. But the project was rejected because when managers and employees used their stated purpose as a filter and asked themselves whether that investment would make them better operators, the answer was no. What the company really needed to do, they determined, was examine how the operations themselves could be improved to eliminate failures that produced call centers inquiries in the first place. When a leader communicates the purpose with authenticity and constancy, as Mueller did, employees recognize his or her commitment, begin to believe in the purpose themselves, and reorient. The changes signal from the top and then it unfolds from the bottom. Stimulate individual learning. Conventional economic logic tends to rely on external motivators. As leaders embrace higher purpose, however, they recognize that learning and development are powerful incentives. Employees actually want to think, learn, and grow. At the St. Louis based not for profit, the mission continues, whose purpose is to rehabilitate and reintegrate into society wounded and disabled war veterans. New hires are assigned a large amount of work. The underlying philosophy is that when a leader gives someone a difficult challenge, it shows faith in that person's potential. That job becomes an incubator for learning and development. And along the way, the employees gain confidence and becomes more committed to the organization and the higher purpose that drives it. By helping employees understand the relationship between the higher purpose and the learning process, leaders can strengthen it. People at the mission continues are required to reflect on that relationship. Often, every 2 weeks, they produce a written document describing their purpose, their strengths, and their development. The exercise is not repetitive because the experience has changed. So, as do the lessons learned, this practice is consistent with research on effective leadership development approaches. In modern organization, new experience tend to come easily, but reflections does not. As the mission continues, employees have become adaptive and proactive. There is less need for managerial control because they know the purpose and see how it had changed them for the better. You can liken this clear sense of direction to commanders' intent in the military. Soldiers know and internalize the commander's strategic purpose. They can carry out the mission even when the commanders isn't there. This means, of course, that the leader must communicate the organization's higher purpose with utter clarity so that employees can make use of their local information and take initiative. Research by business school professors Claudine Goddard, Aaron Repart, and George Sanford shows how critical this is in corporations too. It isn't unique to non-profits. Turn mid-level managers into purpose-driven leaders. To build an inspired, committed workforce, you need middle managers who not only know the organization's purpose but also deeply connect with it and lead with moral power. That goes way beyond what most companies ask of their mid-level people. Consider KPMG, a big four accounting cooperative with thousands of partners. For decades, those partners approached leadership like accounting. They were careful in their observations, exact in their assessments, and cautious about their decisions because that was the cultural tone set at the top. Senior leaders were not inclined to get emotional about ideals, and neither were the partners. As a result, employees at all levels tended to make only safe incremental improvements. But then KPMG went through a transformation. The company began to explore the notion of purpose, searching its history. Its leaders were surprised to find that it had made many significant contributions to major world events. After conducting and analyzing hundreds of employee interviews, they concluded that KPMG's purpose was to help clients inspire confidence and empower change. These five words evoke a sense of awe in the firm, but KPMG's top executives avoid the temptation to turn them into a marketing slogan. Instead, they set out to connect every leader and manager to the purpose. They began by talking openly about their own sense of purpose and meaning. When this had an impact, they recognized that the partners needed to do the same with their teams. When senior management said the expectations, the partners were open to them but did not feel equipped to meet them. So the accounting firm invested in a new kind of training in which the partners learned how to tell compelling stories that conveyed the sense of personal identity and professional purpose. Though applying that training was difficult, it was a real stretch for experts to in investment, real estate, tax, risk in consulting, and so on. The culture did change. Today, the partners communicate their personal purpose to their teams and discuss how it links to their professional lives and the organization's reason for being. In doing so, they are modeling a vulnerability and authenticity that no one had previously expected to see at the middle levels of this accounting firm. Connect the people to the purpose. Once leaders at the top and in the middle have internalized the organization's purpose, they must help frontline employees see how it connects with their day-to-day tasks. But a top-down mandate does not work. Employees need to help drive this process because then the purpose is more likely to permeate the culture, shaping behavior even when managers are not right there to watch how people are handling things. Our best illustration again comes from KPMG, where employees were encouraged to share their own accounts of how they were making a difference. This evolved into a remarkable program called the 10,000 Stories Challenge. It gave employees access to a user friendly design program, invited them to create posters that would answer the question, what do you do at KPMG, while capturing their passion and connecting it to the organization's purpose. Each participating employee created a purpose driven headline such as a combat terrorism, and under it wrote a clarifying statement such as KPMG helps scores of financial institutions prevent money laundering, keeping financial resources out of the hands of terrorists and criminals. Beneath the statement, the employees would insert his or her picture. Each poster carried the tagline inspire confidence, empower, and change. In June, company leaders announced that if the staff could create 10,000 posters by Thanksgiving, 2 extra days would be added to the holiday break. Employees hit that benchmark within a month, but then The process went viral after the reward had already been earned. 27,000 people produced 42,000 posters. Some individuals made multiple submissions and teams produced them as well. KPMG had found a brilliant way to help employees personally identify with its collective purpose. Once the firm's overall transformation had taken root, surveys showed that employees' pride in their work had increased and engagement scores reached record levels. The firm eventually climbed 31 places to the number 12 spot on Fortunate's 100 best companies to work for list, making it the highest ranked of the big four. Recruiting improved, and as turnover decreased, cost dropped. Unleash the positive energizers. Every organization has a pool of change agents that usually goes untapped. We refer to this pool as the network of positive energizers spread randomly throughout the organization, or mature, purpose driven people with an optimistic orientation. People like Corey Munden or Upton in. They naturally inspire others. They are open and willing to take initiative. Once enlisted, they can assist with every step of cultural change. These people are easy to identify and others trust them. We have helped launch such networks in numerous organizations, including Prudential Retirement, Kelly Services, and ET Energy. Typically, at an initial meeting, senior leaders invite network members to become involved in the design and execution of the change process. Within minutes, they say there is buy-in. Regular meetings are scheduled. Their energizers go out, share ideas, and return with feedback and new ideas. They are willing to tell the truth and openly challenge assumptions. As employees judge the purpose to be authentic, engagement scores climbed. There is often another benefit, as the experience of one human resources director illustrates. After establishing a network of positive energizers in a major professional services firm, she called us to report that she felt overwhelmed in a good way by the interest and commitment of the people she had assembled. They were an amazing resource that until now had gone completely unrecognized. They cared as deeply as she did about the organization's purpose and getting colleagues to embrace it. She said, I no longer feel alone. Conclusion: although higher purpose does not guarantee economic benefits, we have seen impressive results in many organizations, and other research, particularly at Gretton study, which included 55 lakh people across 429 firms and involved 117 firm year. Observations from 2006 to 2011 suggest a positive impact on both operating, financial performance, and forward-looking measures of performance when the purpose is communicated with clarity. So, purpose is not just a lofty ideal; it has practical implications for your company's financial health and competitiveness. People who find meaning in their work don't hoard their energy and dedication; they give them freely, defying conventional economic assumptions about self interest. They grow rather than stagnate. They do more and they do it better. By tapping into the power, you can transform your entire organization.